What if STEELIX was in Gen 1 OU? Now, I think Onyx is a Pokemon that pretty much everyone unanimously feels bad for. It looks like an absolute beast in the anime, and I'm sure in the anime where there's no base stats or anything like that, it's probably a good Pokemon to use. But everywhere else, oh my gosh. This thing has 45 attack for crying out loud. I will say, I do think Onyx is a well-designed Pokemon for a first gym, but I do think it's unfortunate that it had to be Onyx. But, you know, Gen 2 was like, okay, that's kind of unfair. Why don't we just give it an evolution? And then for the most part, not really improve? That might be a hot take, but I have used Onyx a disturbing amount of times in Gen 1 OU. Because I don't think it's legitimately fun to use. Good? Absolutely not. But Onyx does have some tools that, well, not good in any tier, or tools that make it interesting at the very least. Obviously, the same typing as Rhydon, while it gives you a quad weakness to water and grass, for the most part, those aren't super popular in Gen 1 OU. So I'd say it's a very reasonable balance. And it's just a great typing. You're just immune to most forms of paralysis. You resist normal. So it's just great. And with that 160 defense, you wall basically all normal types. Is what I would say if you didn't have base 35 HP. But along with that, it has Explosion, it has Bind. These are good moves. It does have Bind, right? Yeah, I'm not sure why he isn't showing it for... I guess it isn't... I guess it's assuming, you don't use Onyx in Gen 1 OU. But like I was saying though, Explosion and Bind are good. And base 70 speed's also pretty good. It's the same as Cloyster. And I think for Trappers, while it's not great, you're still slower than Pinsir, and you're definitely slower than Victory Bell and Tentacruel. It's still a pretty good speed tier to have. And that's why I don't really like what they did with STEELIX. Because not only does STEELIX lose speed, it goes from 70 to 30. So now it's slower than Rhydon. And it's the exact same speed as Slowbro and Snorlax. But not just that, but they buffed its attack. But I think they buffed its attack to what Onyx should have been. Because keep in mind, Onyx, despite being a first gem Pokemon, is still a Pokemon that even Bruno uses. And for a Pokemon being used in the Elite Four, at least for Gen 1 standards, I feel like 85 is... like, that just seems reasonable. But like, once you get to Gen 2, 85 I think just isn't really hitting that hard. And they gave it base 200 defense, which is definitely overcompensating. Like, you didn't need to buff his defense that much. Like you could even just bring his attack to 95. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it's relevant for this video as well, putting STEELIX in Gen 1 OU. Because newsflash, it's going to be even worse for it there than it would be in actual Gen 2 OU. In Gen 2 OU, it has leftovers, and way more importantly, it has Curse. With Curse, you don't care about the speed that much, you can get slower, and then you can like buff your defense even more, as well as your attack. That's good. But Gen 1 OU is a lot more fast-paced in nature. Not to mention, there's more crits, and even though there's no lefties, it's still like the early games where there's DVs and max EVs and everything. So that base 85 attack, while it's nice to have stat Earthquake, it's just not gonna hit as hard as you want it to. But on the upside, it definitely does have a better typing than Onyx. You already have a great typing like Rock and Ground, but now you just still have the complete immunity of Thunder Wave. You don't care about paralysis from Body Slam. But even better, you now resist Psychic, and you're no longer weak to Grass or just Grass. You're still weak to what's it called? Water. But another good one is that you're neutral to ice. But I'll be honest, it doesn't really matter too much in execution, because every single Blizzard user is gonna two-shot you anyways. So maybe that tangent I had at the beginning about STEELIX not really being a good evolution is maybe it's a little bit mean, but I'm just not satisfied with this. Not to mention I think base Onyx was cooler anyways. But I think the main thing that it's just losing out on is not even the attack. I think just losing out on so much speed kinda, it doesn't kill it for STEELIX. I do think he would still be OU, just because he is a Rhydon that can wall the electric types, but isn't weak to psychic. That alone is already pretty good, but there's no way in hell that this thing's gonna be better than Rhydon. Just a good alternative if you're worried about how dangerous some special Pokemon are. But one benefit that STEELIX does have is its move pool. Sap Earthquake's pretty good. Explosion is amazing. Even with 85 attack, that's still gonna hit really hard. It has Bind still, so it can still trap. But not gonna lie, I don't really like it that much. I feel like trappers are obviously great for pivoting, but that's only super good when you're fast and you can trap something before they can move. STEELIX here, let's be real, with how high its defense is, nothing is gonna even bother using a physical move on you. It's good for pivoting, but they're either gonna switch, or they're going to just hit with a special move, regardless of what it is. So STEELIX is going to be taking some pretty decent damage, because 75 HP is only average, and 65 special defense, while not bad for Gen 1 standards, that's only a little bit lower than Tauros' special. You are definitely gonna feel it. Like I said, Blizzard for most Pokemon is still gonna be a 2-hit KO. So Bind I just think is not worth it. And Hyper Beam also isn't worth it, because with Stab Earthquake, Hyper Beam is only hitting as much as a Earthquake. But except it's less accurate, and you're kind of screwed if it doesn't get a KO. So other moves it has is Rest, which obviously for Pokemon like this is pretty good. It has Rock Slide, which could be used for coverage, but unlike Onix or Rhydon, you don't get stab on it, so I'm not sure how good it actually is. Body Slam for fishing for paralysis, I guess, but it does not do a lot of damage at all. So maybe I'm being dumb, or maybe this is just my brain wanting to go for the meme strat, but unironically, maybe Sharpen is the best move for it. I'm pretty sure Sharpen is in Gen 1, just only used by Porygon, I think. But having a move that can just raise your attack, getting rid of, like, let's say, get rid of Hyper Beam for Sharpen. I guess one reason you would use Sharpen is for, I guess, so you can hit Zapdos. Doesn't really seem that good. It rests, or Body Slam, I guess. This is probably what you would have. But Sharpen, you don't have Curse, but you can use Sharpen to maybe raise your attack a little bit. At the very least, it can allow you to 2-hit KO Chansey, which I'm going to show in a little bit. I really do not know if it's good or not, but this right here is probably the best you can do with STEELIX. Not bad, but not very flashy either. Which, I guess, like, shouldn't really be used as a standard. But let's just get onto the replays. Now, Tauros, a critical Earthquake will do about half, so honestly, it's not even that bad. But even so, because STEELIX can't hit that hard in comparison, it can bring STEELIX pretty close to death. And this is where not having leftovers really damns you a lot. So instead, it's that alone, this probably makes it could go either way. But it just gets even worse if Tauros uses Fire Blast, as Fire Blast is just a very consistent 2-hit KO. And with the burn, it's just gonna kill you. Like, no matter what. Even explosion won't do it at that point. But Snorlax, on the other hand, it really depends on the set. If there's no Earthquake, STEELIX can wall it very easily. If there's Reflect, suddenly STEELIX can't do anything to it. And if it's Amnesia, well, I'm pretty sure Snorlax can still win that. But it's definitely going to be taking a lot of damage in. And isn't that the case where having base 30 speed is just really detrimental? Having a speed tail with Snorlax, not only is that embarrassing, but it means that Snorlax can always be a threat to you. The only Snorlax that you can beat are ones with only normal moves. And I don't know. I had this for the Teros and Kukui the way, but now that I'm looking at it again, it might just be a bad matchup. And then Chansey is funny. Ice Beam does good chip to you. Earthquake does more, but even though it can't paralyze you, I'm gonna say Chansey being faster just kinda... I mean, it doesn't really ruin it, because Earthquake can still do a lot of damage. So I don't really know. Against a paralyzed Chansey, you definitely win, but... I couldn't really tell you who has the better matchup here. It's Kukui either way, and I think it just depends on which one of your... which one of you gets annoyed first between you and your opponent. Because I think theoretically, STEELIX can keep going for a crit, but at the same time, these two can also just stall each other out when it comes to power points. So this is exactly why you need Sharpen! And why you gotta pray to God it's not Reflect Chansey. Because obviously Reflect Chansey, you are just screwed against. Absolutely. And I guess another thing is that Chansey can probably get another opportunity to go for Freeze. But you can see there, Sharpen does good damage. If Chansey goes for Reflect, it's annoying. But I guess... Like, I think... I really do think Sharpen's kind of good. But there is a problem just like with other Sword Stance users where it often struggles to get an opportunity. But here's the difference between other Sword Stance users and Sharpen STEELIX. For other Sword Stance users, at least for 1v1 scenarios like this, it often isn't better than just attacking. Sometimes you need to go for Sword Stance, and then it's so to a KO. Which oftentimes just means if you go for Sword Stance, you just kind of die. STEELIX here is not only super bulky, but also, like you saw there, it needs the attack boost in order to actually have a good damage range with Chansey. So it's kind of weird that it's better than a Sword Stance, but it's just how it works sometimes. When you have these videos, they're very weird. At the very least though, Alakazam is one Pokemon that STEELIX does have a good matchup against. It has just enough special defense where the resisted hit means you're not taking much of any damage at all. So Alakazam gets 2-shot, and it can keep going for Recover, but you might just be going long enough for STEELIX to get a crit. But it's worth noting that Recover has way more power points than Earthquake does. So that's exactly why you predict the Sharpen and go for... Or you predict the Recover and go for Sharpen. I messed it up! I'm so sorry. I'm literally the worst YouTuber ever. But to be honest, I think STEELIX might have it a little bit worse because he is getting killed by Clamp. I don't think I need to explain to you that Clamp, or even without Clamp, let's say it's Surf Cloyster. Let's not even say that. Let's say it's just Blizzard Cloyster. This is just a completely unwinnable matchup. And I have very little faith that a paralyzed Cloyster would lose to a Rock Slide STEELIX. But I suppose it can happen. And then Executor. Like you can see there, see how little Body Slam did? This just shows just how mid STEELIX's 85 base attack is. And Executor only has Psychic and normal moves, and a weak Mega Drain. But I don't think it matters, because Executor can keep fishing for those special drops, and he'll probably get it eventually. And Sleep is just very annoying. I will say though, at the very least, even if STEELIX is asleep, it's still a very good Pokemon for pivoting purposes. But what if Executor just doesn't have Sweep at all? Let's say there's another Pokemon put to Sweep. Let's say they put to Sleep your very dangerous Wurmple. So now you can just go for Psychic instead of anything else. Even then, as you see here, STEELIX is still struggling to get good damage in, and that's with a Sharpen. So it's just not good at all. That matchup, no matter what, is just kind of bad. Which, if I'm being honest with you, it gets so much worse from here. Okay, now with this replay, Gengar, obviously, it needs Sleep in order to do anything against you. So not only is that pretty risky in of itself, but STEELIX doesn't care about Psychic, it's immune to Thunderbolt, so it only has Nightshade. And Nightshade's always going to give you a few opportunities for STEELIX to wake up. So even though Gengar won this replay, that's just from Sleep. Jinx could also beat Mewtwo, at least put the Sleep and doesn't wake up. Sorry, let me say that again. Jinx could also beat Mewtwo if Mewtwo gets put to Sleep and doesn't wake up. So, not counting Sleep, which obviously you can't always use, Gengar just has a pretty bad matchup against STEELIX. And it has an even better matchup than a Rhydon, I would say. Can't really see a sample of Jolteon though. It's definitely a could go either way. With Hydro Cannon, Jolteon can do most of STEELIX's damage, but it can't take it out completely. That's why in most scenarios, Jolteon without a crit will barely not kill the STEELIX, and it will force the STEELIX to go for an explosion. But even at red HP, a critical explosion is still mandatory in order to take out the Jolteon. But it's definitely something that the STEELIX can do. But it's very risky. In fact, maybe it should be a bad matchup since Jolteon has a better crit rate, but who knows. And against Jinx, even without Freeze Claws, Blizzard does so much damage to the point where STEELIX, I think, is screwed no matter what. Maybe Rock Slide can do some good damage, but I have little faith that it would actually be a KO. So unless you want to go Explosion on Jinx, assuming something else is already asleep, just avoid the matchup at all costs. And then, like I said, Rhydon is faster, which, as you can imagine, absolutely is a big deal. I'm going to be generous and assume that's a damage range. So even if Earthquake is a 2-hit KO, Rhydon's always faster, and you can't just expect it to be hit with Thunder Wave and Paralyze. So it's just a bad matchup all around. You really wish you had Curse. But even then, Rhydon would also get Curse. But I don't actually know if he would use it. And then Slowbro is just another completely unwinnable matchup. You can explode on it, I guess, but it's just not gonna end well for you. It's just a free win. But I suppose with Explosion you do technically better than Rhydon. And then Blizzard, even without a crit, is gonna do very good damage. And Starmie could always just recover off any damage STEELIX does to it. So Starmie, even with like Thunderbolt or Psychic, most of the time it's gonna have Blizzard, which means it's gonna do a lot of damage to the STEELIX. It can always recover off the damage. So it's just a pretty unwinnable matchup no matter what. And last but not least, we have Zapdos, which is very similar to the Jolteon matchup, but unfortunately, there's no Earthquake, meaning that Zapdos can always just hit Hydro Cannon, and even a Rock Slide is not going to do too much damage. So Zapdos, even just like at the KO, can hit with Hydro Cannon, can recharge, and then has absolutely no problems just killing the STEELIX afterwards. It's a shame. It really makes you wonder what it would be like if there was a scenario where electric types don't have good coverage, which means that they, no matter what, can never hit the ground types. Unfortunately, we don't live in that timeline. All electric types are given Hydro Cannon for some reason, which I would argue is a little bit unbalanced, but who am I to judge? And here's the tier list. Yeah, it does not look good for a Pokemon that's supposed to be a big improvement over Onix, now does it? And yeah, I think I am going to put Snorlax in bad matchups now. I think with the inclusion of STEELIX in the format, you can just guarantee you're never going to see just a purely normal attacking Snorlax anymore. So yeah, this is... Honestly, now that I'm looking at it, I'm not even sure if STEELIX would be OU. I guess in a scenario where they don't have Hydro Cannon, I guess these would become great matchups. But even then, look at this tier list. Explain to me why you would use STEELIX over Rhydon. Rhydon gets hit hard by Psychics, but I still feel like it would be worth it most of the time. What do you think? Do you think STEELIX would be good enough to stay in OU? Or do you think it would suffer a lot and then move to UU? In UU, I think it'd probably be better. But even then, I feel like there's a decent chance that Golem can still outcompete with it. But it's hard to say. Let me know if you think STEELIX would be good in UU as well. And also let me know if you think Jolteon and Zapdos should have Hydro Cannon removed for Generation Jumble Season 2. Because it's been pretty good there with those extremely common coverage moves. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Until next time, this is Groundback, and I look forward to hearing from you.